Greetings and welcome to the Pure Report. I'm your host, Rob Ludeman. It's time to bring the orange with one of my favorite people here at Everpure, probably because we have worked together the longest, but it is none other than Mr. Nihal Mirashi, our PMM covering database solutions. And I'm so excited to get into this state of database infrastructure report with you. But first, welcome back.
Thank you.
I think the last time I had you on was 7 years ago. So, every 7 years we'll do this. So in 2033, we'll see you again. No, hopefully sooner than that. But it was funny you mentioned before we recorded here that you look back and the first time we talked was probably 2018 on the program.
Yeah, that's right. 2019, we had I was marketing focused on the SaaS vertical, and SaaS was my thing. And Stay Sassy, My Friends was the podcast episode that we recorded, which is still out there, by the way.
It is, yeah. And you sold me about that. You sold me on that. You said, I think this Stay Sassy, My Friends should be the title. And look, I'm open to any input we get on these podcasts to make things fun and clever. And that was what you were working on, which is really interesting when you look retrospectively at how we saw the segments and the markets at the time that we identified at this time, this class of companies, this software as a service. We still do that today, but we've kind of resorted how we look at the market. But there were enough of them at that time, and they were doing enough around data transformation and the way they operated and seeing how they could deliver better services to their end customers. That was your first job here at Everpure, right?
It's been an exciting ride so far, and I'm now, as you mentioned, solutions marketing lead for databases, and lots of great things that Everpure is doing for our customers that have database environments.
Well, I was thrilled when you became available, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago, right? When we tended to move away from that SaaS focus, and one of the other leaders on the marketing team came to me and went, do you think Nihal would be an interesting fit? Like, is there anything that you've been looking to get into on your team? And at that time, we knew that Oracle was really strong for the business and Microsoft SQL Server, and SAP was a distant third overall, but there were these interesting new things that we called at the time open source databases. We were looking at MySQL and Postgres and others that were picking up the pace. And so that was the impetus that allowed me to bring you over and find a role in my team. And you crushed it. You went out in like 3 months and built a whole go-to-market plan and understood the market around open source databases. And then all of a sudden we had a website and something to build around to go and promote to customers. It was really cool. It was really fun to have you do that.
Thanks, Rob. It's been a fun ride. And yeah, I still love databases.
And that's what we're here all about today. You weren't always in databases and you weren't always in data management, though, right? You have a Citrix background, if I remember closely. Like you were more networking as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Started my marketing career, I should say, at Cisco, technical marketing, and then product management. Moved over to a startup company, and then after a few years joined Citrix in product marketing. And then from there, I got a call from Pure Storage, Everpure now.
Yeah.
And it's been a fun ride so far at Everpure.
It's great. I love that. One other thing I want people to know, because it's always interesting, people's journeys and where they come from, because we all come from different places. I love where you're from, because it's not obscure is the wrong word, but like where you grew up, I think is super interesting.
Well, so I grew up in Mumbai, India, but I also I spent a few years in Fiji.
That's the one I was looking for. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So maybe I should do a pitch, a tourism pitch for folks who have not been to Fiji. Highly recommend it. Many beautiful places to visit in Fiji. If you love scuba diving, if you like snorkeling. So yeah, highly recommend you visit Fiji. And of course, if you've not been to India, visit India too.
Of course. Well, it's always been fun for some of those conversations we've had that haven't been work related, right? When we bring up things that are pop culture oriented, and we do have some commonality in the music style that we like, and we'll plug that for. Stay tuned for something later in the episode that we're going to insert as a surprise relative to the recent Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees. But also I reflect on just fun conversations we've had where you've gone, oh, did you know about this artist, or do you remember this TV show? And I didn't, because you grew up in an entirely different place, but then you were able to show me videos of what that was. And it was always fun just to learn and hear about those experiences you had growing up.
Absolutely. My goal still is to make you a fan of cricket.
All right.
This year. So Major League cricket season is coming up in June. Maybe I can entice you into coming for one of the cricket matches.
There's a version of cricket where I don't have to sit for 12 hours and watch the game.
Well,
is there the fast one? I like that version of rugby or whatever it is that's really fast.
Yes, yeah, you'll like it, because this is the 2020 format, which tends to be much shorter than a 5-day test match. So.
All right. And I still have to educate you around baseball. Deal. One other thing that you've done, that you've taken on yourself, and that's what I love about Everpure, is people take the initiative to just learn and grow. You're kind of Mr. AI around here, right? Particularly within the marketing department. How and when did that start? Why? What got you interested? And when I say Mr. AI, you're deep into exploring the different tools, finding out how ways they can help, how they can streamline. I had Sean Rosemary on recently, and he said, look, people that use AI, they shouldn't be afraid of it. It's really like getting yourself a team of interns that work for you to do some of the mundane tasks, but you actually are branching out of your traditional role. You're still doing that day to day, but you're also now on some of these tiger teams and helping people do things with AI. Super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would 100% agree with what Sean said. You know, it's a great way to actually be able to scale and be able to do your job more effectively. For me, it started with trying to understand our customers a little better. You know, how are they using their databases? You know, how what are their pain points, and be able to also help our sales team be able to engage more effectively. And from that, it was about trying to look at some of the tools that we have, look at some of the reasons that we win, and understand and be able to enable our sales team. But at the end of the day, just understand our customer needs more and be able to be more effective at the role. So
seems like a great use case, right, for that. I want to recap some of the prior database related episodes that we've done, because we sprinkle these in from time to time, and people know over time, if they've listened for a while, that I have a background going back there. But Andrew came on recently, Silifant, and we talked preparing for Oracle 26 AI. And I was actually looking at comments on YouTube today, and a couple people commented like, hey, very, very timely topic, right? Which it is, because that's something people are going to start being able to take advantage of soon. Anthony Nocentino comes on from time to time, and around the time we publish this, I think I'll have had him on potentially again, although I'm going to add Justin Emerson, and we're thinking about having them do a debate between structured and unstructured data.
That should be
block
fun.
versus file and object, and kind of have a battle. So foundationally we know a lot around what people are contending with databases, and trying to move away from manual work and automation, and what AI vectorization is going to do. But I think it's really interesting that you and the campaigns team went out and commissioned a report, right? This state of database infrastructure report. We're going to give people some of it, right? We'd love for you to go and read it, to download and sift through it yourself. So we're going to give you a smattering of some of the details and some of the data points, and go through a few of the areas that you all talked about. We got quite a few people here, 500 infrastructure and data professionals. I kind of like that it's both, right?
Yeah.
It's not purely a DBA thing. It's an infrastructure thing, since the chocolate goes with the peanut butter in those areas, right?
Absolutely. And I think for us, it was about stepping away and just taking a closer look at how these enterprise database estates are today, right? So, and that's where we partnered with Vance and Bone, and we reached out to survey over 500 professionals globally, right? So as you mentioned, infrastructure owners, infrastructure operators, database administrators, and application owners, essentially everyone who is responsible for owning or operating a database environment. And essentially we were trying to understand a few things. Number one, how are they using their environment today? What's their path for modernization? And what's What are the things that are slowing it down? What are their expectations? And where are they headed in terms of their journey? And as you mentioned, we got some really interesting results that I'm sure we're going to get into.
Yeah, no, we're going to dive in. And I love starting with just sort of the high level takeaways that we have listed here just to give people an idea of what we'll kind of drill into, right? Modernization isn't failing due to a lack of effort. It's failing because the model is broken. What
Yeah.
model is broken? What's broken?
Yeah, so I think database estates are caught between two realities, right? Like most of the organizations understand that they have to modernize. You mentioned the awesome guests that you've had on
Yeah.
this podcast. They've talked about Oracle 26 AI, SQL Server 2025, and other database platforms that are having AI capabilities coming to them and the promise. So obviously, a lot of the organizations understand that they need to modernize, but when we look at the initiatives and the way that many organizations have approached modernization, it hasn't fundamentally changed. It's usually, you plan a project, you plan some downtime, you do the migration or upgrade, and then you do the validation and hope everything works. But that is fundamentally broken because that is actually causing disruptions. In fact, one of the things that came out in this survey is 85% of the people that were surveyed were concerned about modernization initiatives because they associate that with disruption, right? And so that whole model needs to be rethought and looked at more closely.
Yeah, I like that a good perspective that there's certain parts of the environment that are lagging, right? It's one thing to, and maybe I make it akin to, if you're sitting there with an 8-year-old iPhone and you're upgrading to the latest iOS, there's going to be some incongruity there with how things operate. I loved one of the other, and this is one that's very near and dear, is the observation from the report that success is no longer really defined solely by performance,
Yep.
right? I think if we got in a time machine and went back 8 or 10 years, that would be the only thing that it's measured by. But we know the reality is that most vendors have moved to providing all flash in their solutions, or at least sort of a hybrid. And so while there used to be this kind of turbo effect provided by flash versus disk or hybrid, it's leveled the playing field. And so now it's more about like, what are the operational things that you can provide? And hint, hint, that's why I love that we have Evergreen for non-disruptive upgrades. But I thought that was an interesting observation too, that confirms a feeling that we all had that nobody's going out and trumpeting their IOPS
Exactly.
number anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, well, everybody has about the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Tell me how you can make me operate more efficiently.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Performance is table stakes now, right? It's about operational assurance. And one of the things that came out in this survey is 86% of the people surveyed absolutely see the promise of AI vector workloads. They do fundamentally believe that the role of the database is going to change, but at the same time, 71% are not confident that their infrastructure is going to be able to get them there, right? And I think this goes back to your point, or that example that you gave with the old iPhone and trying to upgrade or get it to the latest software release. It's kind of similar in the sense that your infrastructure today might have been okay for your OLTP and OLAP workloads, or it might have served that purpose. But as we move to the future, there's you need to be using something that is more suited to that.
Would you say it's fair that groups working with databases tend to be more conservative? And I bring this up because you went into the AI vectorization direction. When I first started hearing that, it was like, oh, that sounds interesting, but also a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And is that going to be forced upon teams to use and figure out? But my perception had always been, okay, we're really conservative, right? This is typically running the mission critical data
Absolutely.
for the company, and it's our customer data or it's our supply chain data or whatever it is. And we can't go take a bunch of risks,
Exactly.
right? Like,
Yeah, and that's I think that's super critical, and I'm glad you brought that up because stability is priority number one, right? And so what tends to happen, as you just alluded to, the database teams choose the safest path because they don't want to be in a situation where they have to re-architect or have to choose something other than stability. What that really means, though, is sometimes innovation takes a backseat because then when you're concerned about disruptions coming from modernization, you want to try to minimize those disruptions, especially caused by the infrastructure, and that becomes a concern.
Yeah, and back to your stats from before about there's awareness that AI and vector, right? That 86% and that 71% that want to get there, but they don't know that they can with the current infrastructure set, which really creates a gap, right, where you are today. And it's interesting because Andrew and I hit on that as well with this upgrade tax or whatever that I think he built into his blog, which is like, well, we have these really new exciting things that we want to get to, these new features, but when we get there, are we still going to be able to keep the lights on and run the business?
Absolutely.
Like, it does nothing to have all these fancy bells and whistles if you're suffering from performance lag, or you're experiencing downtime, or you're experiencing disruption.
Exactly.
It doesn't do any good. What about hybrid environments? And I'll be unfair and make you define what you would say a hybrid environment, and then we can discuss it or debate it a little bit. But what would we say is going on with hybrid environments?
Yeah, so not surprisingly, the results show that majority, I would say pretty much everybody, because the results said 93% of organizations or respondents had a hybrid environment. So it shows how far we have come, right? If we looked back 5 years ago, and if you had done the survey at that time, I'm sure the results would have been different. But I think pretty much that seems to be the de facto standard in most organizations. At the same time, what is interesting is 73% of the respondents said it was harder to manage their hybrid environments today compared to 3 years back. And it's not just because of having multiple environments or multiple things to manage. It's because of the workflows, having different tools and different ways of doing things. That's just kind of adding that operational friction. Whereas the whole promise of hybrid environments was around increasing flexibility.
Yeah, so it's to be easy and flexible. And then even I've had guests on where it's come up in the last 6 months too, where now we get into issues with data sovereignty, right? Where is that data located? Because when you start moving into hybrid, this was a problem 20 years ago. Because everything was sitting on bare metal and everything just lived in the data center close to where you had it. And there wasn't even a lot of outsourcing then, I would say. And now you're going, well, this company or this government has a compliance requirement and I need to know where that data lives, which is really fascinating because when I had Patrick Smith on back in November, he was talking about there's companies in Europe that are springing up in different countries who are just there with their business model saying, we are a safe data sovereign place where you can hybridize. So one solution has led to another set of challenges and issues, which it's IT, it'll eventually get solved, but you definitely identify, the challenges that people are having where there was this promise of hybrid being like, oh, it's easy, throw it in there, do DR in the cloud and you have data viability and and we do it, right? Like we have Anthony Nocentino do amazing demos of managing these things, but it gets back to the question of, what are you actually trying to do? Like cloud is not just a destination for the sake of being in cloud. Cloud is like, well, what are you trying to do and what's the cost model? It's super, super interesting, but also leads to another good point here that you guys hit on the survey too, which is around data silos, right? You start getting and maybe related to hybrid, but also can happen anyway. So what about data silos that come up? And I guess started with why do we still have data silos? Shouldn't we have solved this by now?
To be honest, no organization starts off by saying, "Hey, we want to create silos."
Let's go create some silos, right? Yeah, I know. It's not a goal.
I think everybody starts off with the best intention, right?
Great.
You get a new system. You don't. you want to isolate it because you don't want it to cause any kind of disruptions to your production system, which seems like the right thing to do in the short term, right? But in the long term, essentially, what ends up happening in a lot of organizations is that they end up having multiple different tools or multiple different workflows or methods of actually managing these systems. And essentially, what happens after that is that they're just spending a lot of time maintaining these systems. And one of the things that came out in the survey is 60% of the respondents were not confident about their infrastructure costs over a 3-year period, which is not, it's not just the maintenance and the time that you're spending maintaining these systems, but it's also the cost factor. So that what you really end up with is more complexity, less visibility, and slowing down progress, right?
Yeah. And I'm hearing things that would be interesting in this, like we're not supposed to solve these here, but how to deal with the inability to forecast infrastructure costs. Sounds like an evergreen one thing. That would be an interesting conversation for teams out there that are worried about that. Or the part where you were talking about teams spending a lot of time on multiple tools and workflows and refresh cycles. There's like a intelligent control plane, fusion, automation. Why continue to repeat the same task or the same workflow when you could do a preset that would automate it? But
I love how you tie that nicely together.
A little tiny bow, and that's hopefully something that we'll hit with Anthony and Justin on the other one that we're doing. The report also touches on, there's quotes, it's air quotes for the audio episode, everyone, the disruption paradox.
Yeah.
Come on, what does that even mean? What's the disruption paradox?
Yeah, so we talked about how the modernization model is broken, right? So it's about plan an outage, do your migration or upgrade, do the validation, and then hope everything works out,
cross
right?
your fingers, right?
Okay, cross your fingers. So it's essentially that has become synonymous with disruption, and that's really causing that paradox for database teams, right? Because, like I said, everybody understands that they need to modernize, but then you don't want to spend a lot of time or have your operations disrupted. In fact, one of the things that came out in this report was 70% of the respondents said downtime, even planned downtime, is not acceptable in their organization, right? So obviously this requires us to reevaluate how we go about modernization of infrastructure.
Yeah, and downtime, I love that we're in a point where it's viewed as no longer acceptable by the majority, because for so many years it was viewed as acceptable. It was just a part of dealing with infrastructure. And
it was like compute, a nature of the business.
It could be compute, could be networking, could be storage. And again, makes me proud to work where we do, where we have this solution where people come up to us and say, because of non-disruptive upgrades that you provide across the entire solution stack, I no longer have these weekends where I have to be away from my family, or these really complex things where we have to pull 40 people into a room to, figure out and test everything. We just do the upgrade and we go. And so it is great. It's great to see that. It seems backwards to me, though, that 85% it's worry that modernization will negatively impact operations. It would seem to me if you get modern that it should improve. Is that just because what's being brought in is net new and there's a learning curve? Or I don't know. What's your take on that? That's an interesting
it's a combination of many things. It's definitely the learning curve, but there's also the fear that there might be some hidden costs.
Okay.
And some of the other things that will cause progress to slow down.
Okay. Got it. And closely related, right? The other point that was evaluated in the survey around operational overhead, right? Nobody likes operational overhead. Certainly nobody likes spending time on maintenance. And then blows me away, 80% of the DBAs that you guys surveyed in there spend more time revalidating than innovating. And I feel like I talked about this on a pod or it's something else, like like 5 years ago, or I sat through one of the database vendors' pitches where they said, well, we're putting all these AI capabilities into, and it's automating, and you're going to get more time being a strategist than doing mundane things. And yet here we are again with 4/5 of DBAs saying, yeah, they're still going back and checking that things work right.
And that stat not only blew my mind, but it also made me realize that you might have the right strategy in place as an organization, but if you don't have the capacity to actually focus on innovation because your team is getting sucked into these mundane tasks or maintaining or revalidation, you're not going to be able to execute on the innovative things that you really want to execute on.
It reminds me, and this was back ancient days, Oracle, maybe more like 10, 12 years ago, but one of the most effective presentations that one of the solutions architects that I worked with was something, and I got to make sure my brain, this wasn't a thing that somebody did at Everpure, but it could be. So sorry out there if this was an Everpure thing and not an Oracle thing, but it was something that was called like the day in the life of a DBA. Right. And it was basically this person's experience, which makes me think more it was a Marsha Pierce thing. Well, either way, it was the day in the life of a DBA. And it went through like starting at 8:00 and from 8:10 to 8:20, what do you do? And all these mundane things that could then be eliminated by the use of the right infrastructure technology or the right process or the right operational adjustments, right? And that always fascinated, and people loved it. Like people love seeing that, like what happens throughout the course of the day, which gets back to, and I guess the other stat you had too on the 55% on maintenance. That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. You just, I think that's a great podcast episode. Like you can think of a refreshed version of that podcast now.
Day in the life.
Day in the life, the sequel.
Yeah, Day in the Life sequel. What is it? What is it like now? Actually, I have one of the new FSAs lined up. We're going to do that in May.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're one of the new guys that joined the Field Solution Architect team came to me and said, "Hey, can we dive into what the DBA role is now and how it's changing and evolving?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it." So then back to our friends, the DBAs and database administrators, right? For those that don't like TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. What role do these folks have in database modernization? But then also, how does that equate to cost, right? Because you've got a cost of the equipment, you've got a cost of the operations, you have a cost of the resourcing. And we know that, you look at resource ratios to machine, ratios to database. But overall, as we see all this complexity, like what are orgs saying about the costs that they're contending with?
Yeah, so I mentioned the fact that 60% of the respondents said that they could not predict their 3-year costs for infrastructure, right? There's another interesting stat kind of related to that, which is the fact that 71% said that they received some kind of budget surprises or cost spikes from vendors. And so essentially what this really means, and to your question, the costs are not scaling with demand, right?
Okay.
Like obviously the database team wants to do the best, and infrastructure teams also want to do the best by their organization and be able to plan ahead and plan their environment. But when your costs are from external sources, right, whether it's a budget spike because of a refresh, an update, or something that's external to your control, that certainly doesn't set you up for success. And that again is a blocker to innovation, because you're spending more time. If you're not confident about what your budget is or what your cost is going to look like, you're going to be delaying some of your investments, and that is going to block your innovation.
Yeah, unpredictability, right, is definitely a risk. Remember the finance person that I talked to? We were at the Oracle show.
Yeah.
Like 2-3 years ago, and I was super excited because this finance guy just came by our Everpure booth. And again, it was one of those that we get sometimes where the guy's like, I don't know anything about storage, right? I don't do database storage, but I'm the finance guy at XYZ company. And I want to know if you guys have anything that can solve this. And I'm like, okay, well, what's, nice to meet you. Thanks for stopping by. What's this? And he said, well, my storage team is driving me crazy lately. And I went, well, that's not a great problem. What more can you talk about? I said, my storage team is driving me crazy. and sorry to frequent pod listeners, I probably told this one a couple times, but he said they keep coming to me every few months asking for more capacity. So like they are not doing a good job of predicting capacity. Now, this is not directly a database admin problem, but it certainly can be driven, right? Obviously, there was something around data growth that was
Absolutely.
going on there that they weren't understanding really well. And then, obviously, so well, what can you do to help? And I said, oh, there's two things. We have this really cool technology and the arrays where we manage and monitor telemetry, and we can actually, based on your actual use, we can predict how and when out in the future you might need capacity expansions. But honestly, I would invite you to get with your local Pure team. I think it was in Wisconsin, and just go have a conversation about Evergreen One. And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, well, it's as a service. Do you use other things in your environment as a service? He's like, absolutely, all the time. We have software, we have this. I'm like, great. Well, we can do exactly that predictability with storage as a service. And that's what it reminds me of when you're talking about that unpredictability, vendor pricing changes and migration costs and just that uncertain growth. Like we planned poorly. We just didn't plan well.
Absolutely. And I think what it's doing for database environments is bringing that predictable economics at scale, right?
Yeah. I'm going to do an episode on the roles of DBA and infra operator evolving. I did an episode a long time ago, probably again, I'm name dropping Marsha, where we did, I think we did IT people are from Venus and DBAs are from Mars. Would you still say that's the case? I'll open before we get to the stat. Are they still super different, or have we seen a little bit more collaboration and closer work together?
I would say that things are getting better.
That's good.
That's for sure.
That's good.
But what the survey also revealed was some interesting data. We've these roles are becoming more strategic.
Mm-hmm.
They're evolving, right? It's not just administrative tasks. So I think a majority of the DBAs that was surveyed said that they are spending more time upskilling into newer technologies, AI, machine learning, data integration. So I think their role is evolving.
That's
likewise,
great. Yeah.
and likewise for the infrastructure folks. I think what is, however, going to happen is there's going to be more expectations from where they would like to go with this skill set, and if their tools and processes and infrastructure is not up to speed, that's going to be a mismatch, right? So I think this is where I think we have an opportunity to do things right in terms of the modernization journey.
Yeah. Fix the mundane, fix the day-to-day, the things that aren't really value add. And then all of a sudden you're freeing up time for, and I keep using this term and I may just keep going with it, but you're taking it from data operators to data strategists, right?
Absolutely.
Is how could you start informing other parts of the business on what they're using and consuming. And it's a really exciting time right now here at Everpure as well, where we're starting to do things with the intelligent control plane and fusion and automation and presets. But the next layer kind of above that is how are we going to help and enable IT teams to go and become internal service providers of data?
Yeah.
It reminds me of, you're a private cloud guy too. It reminds me of all the private cloud conversations that we used to have like 15 years ago, where you're creating this service catalog of things that people want to get, but it's now even more streamlined and automated because of what we can do with AI and MCP. It's a super exciting time.
We live in exciting times.
We live in exciting times. You ready for hot takes? We'll do a little bit differently. I'm not going to make you do the oops thing that I normally have everybody else do, but we'll do a couple on the database topic that we've been hitting, and then as plugged up front, as alluded to, I want to, we're music guys, so I want to do this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and make you come up with a way to connect it to what we're talking about. So what's that one part of database modernization that is still unnecessarily disruptive? What is the thing that's still holding people back mostly?
We talked about it, and I will say planned downtime.
Planned downtime. That's the big negative.
Absolutely.
That's the big negative. So modernization should be continuous and not disruptive, not event-based. Yeah, makes sense. Evergreen. What about the biggest hidden cost that is there? And we've talked about a lot of cost things. So is there something else
Yeah,
Is there something else that we're not seeing yet?
I think it's like it's not what you buy, but it's on where you're spending your time, right? And we touched upon it a little. We talked about the fact that teams are spending more of the time doing maintenance work, and that I think that is where your hidden costs, right? Because you're losing people that losing your people to mundane tasks, and these are well-paid folks, so. That becomes the hidden cost to any organization.
The hidden cost is time. Yes. Okay, number 3. And so sorry if this is a little clunky, folks, but we just came up with this probably 2 hours ago when you Slacked me, and I really liked it. So I stuck it in. The outline. So it turns out that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees were announced in multiple categories, and we're going to just stick with the performers category, and over a separate conversation you can talk to me, anybody, about my opinion of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in general. One of my good friends, Ted, is not a big fan, and I tend to be more towards his side, but it is what it is. It's a thing. It gets people talking. It's there. We acknowledge. So this year's inductees, and I always scratch my head when I see this. This is why I kind of get negative about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Man.
Like, I look at these names and I go, okay, a lot of these should kind of already be in there. And it's like rock and roll, and then ones where it's like not rock and roll. Phil Collins, Billy Idol, Iron Maiden, our collective favorite, Joy Division / New Order, Oasis, all right, Brits, Sade, Luther Vandross, and Wu-Tang Clan. So was your big challenge that you pitched me that you could do is first, any observations around those? Obviously we love Iron Maiden.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, by the way, my favorite part of the episode, right?
Of course. And we made everybody wait till the end.
You and I love music.
Yes.
I'm super excited to see this list. Like you, I thought there would already be many of these names would already be.
It's crazy. Phil Collins, come on.
Well, it turns out that he's
already in with Genesis. But
But
Phil Collins as a solo put out bangers for like the entire decade of the 80s and into the early 90s.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Iron Maiden, same thing.
Yeah.
So and really some iconic names there. I think one thing that and one thing that struck me is all of these great artists have been able to adapt and keep with whether it's changing, adapting their sound, being able to look at new ways to connect with their audience, or look at ways of collaborating, right? And I think that's really been their modernization journey, if you will. And I think what we can take away from that is essentially, for organizations that are looking to modernize their infrastructure, you don't have to throw out everything, but you do have to look at how you evolve, right? Like the old model that we've been talking about, where disruption is a given, it doesn't necessarily have to be a given, right? And I think that is this is what I take away from looking at this list and looking at how these artists have had everlasting power.
Well, and also good improv by me there. Yes, and also I don't think these artists evolved and modified to stay with the current times in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Right. So they looked at others, they talked at others. And for us, that's definitely the value of things that we provide, such as Peer Accelerate as an event where peers
Absolutely.
can come and hear from us, but also one another. The growing Everpure community that we're developing, our peer user groups out there, right? So to continue to modernize, but also to evolve and adapt requires, yes, a little bit of looking introspectively and also retaining that DNA that you mentioned. Like, what do you do that's good and that's you, but then also really listening and learning to others in your industry. Like, who are your peers and how are they doing it? Maybe not competitors directly, but who are the peers that you respect, that you listen to? How are they getting past some of these database administration challenges, or dealing with IT modernization, or adopting AI? I think there's a lot of avenues out there, and of course we're here to help as well. But certainly we know people learn more peer to peer, just like I'm sure at some point Iron Maiden in the mid to late 80s looked at kind of, oh, these, people are starting to use a lot of these synthesizers. Let's throw some synthesizer stuff in there. And then you have lots of, what came out on Seventh Son and things like that. Sorry, we're getting too deep into that. All right, last call for everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed hearing this. The call to action first before you do last call. Check out the survey. We'll put a webpage with a direct link into the episode description here so people can find it, but you can also go to everpuredata.com/databases, purestorage.com/databases for right now. But last call, like what was interesting about the survey? Like, did you like what you saw, and do you think it was going to be really instructive to people?
I certainly think so. I think there's a lot of goodness in there. We only touched the surface here with some of the findings. I think folks will find additional insights in the survey that will really help them assess where they are in their modernization journey.
Yeah, and we have really smart folks here at this company who have grown up and lived in database, right? They are not storage people that we converted to database people. They are people who have been DBAs and worked in that environment. I mean, even the guy who used to run SAP for one of our largest competitors now works for us as an FSA. So do call upon that team. They are terrific. They are always willing to come. And honestly, just to listen. They're not there to sell you anything. They're there to listen to challenges you have and try to help you work through those. And certainly, if there's a way we can do it with Everpure, that would be great.
Yeah, we have a very active community, and like you said, we have database experts who speak the language. So, looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Good to see you on this program after 7 years.
Let's
we'll try to make it sooner than 2033 here.
Absolutely.
If we can do that. No, seriously, it's always great. I loved it. This is one of the easier ones because you and I have just talked so many times over so many years about things. So I hope it was super comfortable, super easy. I had a good time. I hope you did too.
I did. Thank you so much, Rob.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And again, check out that survey in the episode notes for this episode, and certainly go to everpuredata.com/databases. And thank you for checking out this episode of the Pure Report podcast. As always, tell a friend, tell a colleague, and we will keep the great guests like Nihal coming on to the program. With that, we will wrap. For Everpure, my good buddy, Nihal Mirashi. This is Rob Ludeman saying, don't look back. Something might be gaining on you.